Wassail! The traditional response if someone shouts Wassail on a day like this is to shout back even louder than them, drink hail! Wassail!
Drink hail!
Wassail!
Drink hail!
Wassail! Fine form. Can you come in a little bit closer? It's not a performance, it's a folk tradition. Who's been to a Wassail before? Can you give me a cheery wave and an aye aye? Who's never ever been to a Wassail? Can you give me another cheery wave and a oh no? Well, that's brilliant. We need friends at a Wassail and we need virgins. So those of you who are new blood, you're going to be, well, there's only one word that I can think of in the English language that rhymes with orchard. Anyone know what it is? Tortured. So it's a good old ancient practice that happens at the end of Christmas, and more than that, it happens here in this place. And what a beautiful orchard we have. This piece of land shared in the community of Bridport, only 11 years old. How old is it? Orchard people?
11.
I give up. Let's say 11. 11 years old, a place where people can meet, where we can celebrate the seasons, from May Day to Midsummer to Harvest Home to Apple Day and all the way through to Wassail. And Wassail itself, the word means be healthy. So it's a time when we gather together to kind of get feeling of merriness going. We've had the crap of Christmas cleared away, but we're still in that midwinter season where fires and merrymaking. And I think Wassail's got even more kind of importance because we go outside to do our Wassail. We don't stay inside with the central heating on, although you wouldn't need it today. So Wassail is to be healthy, and we stand together at this time of year when we've kind of had the fertility and the kind of frothiness of May, and we've had the abundance and the generosity of the apple trees in autumn where those branches were weighed down with fruit. And now it's our standing together with the trees time. It's a time where we remember the trees because they're in their naked state. So we all take off our clothes when we go. Oh, sorry, that was last night. This is it's the afternoon one. So we stand together with the trees. We honour the fruits and the juice that they provided in the last year. We stand with them to say that you're going to be healthy this coming growing year. We allow them to stay tight and dormant. We scare away the bad spirits so no malignant forces are going to affect them when it comes to their spring growth. And it's a time where we can connect with each other. It's a time where strangers become friends and friends become strange. And that's definitely going to be the order of the day. So with your permission, we'll start with a short wassailing story. And it's a story of an old farmer who lived in Dorset, and I can't remember his name. Anybody got a name of an old farmer in their mouth? Stanley. Lovely. Stanley Ebenezer. Now, Stanley Ebenezer was a good fella that lived on the land. He farmed in sympathy with the soil, he farmed in the rhythm of the nature, and he remembered to celebrate the seasons at the right time, Jim, and in the right place, and in the right way. And so the land, it thrived and prospered. But the old farmer, he had two sons. Now the first son, he was charming and cheerful with a fine set of chunky facial furniture. And he was a good man. And he loved the land as much as his father. But the second son, well, there wasn't a lot of good you could say about him. He was mean and moody and other things beginning with the letter M. Maybe you could help out with that.
Miserable.
Miserable, thank you. Mean, moody, miserable, and?
Mendacious.
Miserly and mendacious. He was so mendacious, he had no idea what he was. Anything else? Morbid. Maudlin, even better. He was a maudlin man. With what? Mundane. He was an everyday, mundane, maudlin, miserable, mendacious. What? It takes a town crier to shout mellifluous. Well, he may be mellifluous alongside all those other M's, but it was when the old farmer, the father, died, it was the youngest son who inherited the whole of the farm. And this was a tradition in Dorset, because the oldest ones were expected to be on their way and having a farm of their own, and the youngest one would stay with the parents until the parents died, and they would inherit the farm. But the oldest son was still living on the farm, and now he had to go, cap in hand, and ask for a place to live from his younger brother. Well, said the younger brother. You said that as well, didn't you? Yeah. Let's do it again. Well, said the younger brother, you can have the old shed that's up on the hill. You can have the little orchard that grows around it. You can have the old stable and any animals that are left in life. But, and I do have a big but. Said the brother. He said, you must pay me a rent. every year on New Year's Day you must pay me a rent for that little shed in the orchard, and the rent will be, and at this point he consulted his financial advisors. Does anybody happen to be an accountant here in this?
Oh no.
You wouldn't find them in an orchard. Well, you never know. Anybody work in financial services?
Me, I do.
You do? Oh, she is an accountant. So he consulted his advisors. What should we charge the older brother? What rent should we pay for a year's rent?
It could be a peppercorn rent.
Oh, yeah, but he's a mean, mendacious, miserable kind.
Okay then. Okay then.
£1,000! My goodness me, what the blood drained from the older brother's face. He never even dreamt of £1,000, but he had to do what he had to do. And so he went up to his shed and he opened the door, and the door was falling off its hinges and the windows were cracked. There was gaps in the roof that the sky could be seen through. And then he went into the orchard, and all the trees, they were naked and had no apples on them. And he went into the stables, and in the stables there were 2 animals, an ox and a donkey, and they both had long faces because the back of the ox, it was all bent and crooked, and the leg of one of the legs of the donkey, it was all stiff like a chair leg, and he couldn't move. He'd lost all the articulation. He was becoming a bit of a wonky donkey. And he looked at the animals, he looked at the orchard, he looked at his shed, and he said, what am I to do about this? And then he remembered what his father told him. If you're ever in trouble, you should go out into the woods and seek the advice of the old hen wife. And there she was in a clearing in the forest with a little red cape brewing up some kombucha, and she looked up. She couldn't see it first because she was so old, her eyebrows had grown down across her face and she had to use 2 knitting needles to wind them up. And then she looked at him and she said, sit down and have a bit of kombucha. He'd never tasted a kombucha, but it was good. And when she talked to him and he told the story, she said, I'll tell you what, have you got any money at all? He said, all I've got is 1 penny. Give me your 1 penny and I'll give you some good advice. What do you reckon? Penny?
Yeah.
Penny for your thoughts? Of course! He paid his 1 penny and she said, this is what you should do, take care of your animals. She told him how to go into the forest and to gather herbs and medicinal leaves and to make a kind of healing poultice, and she told him to put it onto the back of the ox and to the leg of the donkey, and all will be well. And he thanked the old woman and he went back on his way picking the herbs and picking the leaves, and he made with his pestle and mortar a lovely medicinal medicine, and he put it onto the back of the ox and onto the leg of the donkey, and sure enough, within a week those animals were doing well. And as that kind of herby stuff fell off their bodies and onto the ground, the animals started to eat it. And this is a good position to be in, actually. And as they started to eat it, you know what, the old farming thing, what goes in? And it must have been good stuff, because the manure was laid onto the roots of the tree. And there, pretty soon, those trees were beginning to thrive and survive. And in the springtime, there was the delicate scent of apple blossom. There was the gentle humming of bees. Oh, yes. And each blossom had a little bee's bottom. And pretty soon, there was the ancient ritual of pollination, which gives us honey in the hives and apples on the trees. And all through the summer, the apples sweetened and swelled. And by the autumn time, he had enough apples to take off the tree, to squeeze into juice. And like magic, it turned into cider. If I say cider, could you say ooh-ah? Cider! Ooh-ah! Cider! Ooh-ah! And all the winter long he had got something good to drink and to give him vitamin C and all the things he needed. And he loved it. His beard grew bigger and his face grew redder. And all the way through to New Year's Eve. And on New Year's Eve there was a knock at the door. Has anybody got the means to make a sound like a knock at the door? Oh, that is an amazing knock at the door. That's pretty good as well. And there was the knock at the door. It sounded like several, in fact. And there, standing in the doorway, was his brother on the phone as usual, right in the middle. He couldn't be bothered to answer the door. He said, hello, it's me on the other side of the door. I've come to remind you about the £1,000. Oh no, said the older brother, I've completely forgotten about the £1,000. How am I ever going to? Well, he said, I'll tell you what. I've been reading old father's old books in the old farmhouse, and they say that somewhere on this farm there is buried treasure. And they also say that on New Year's Eve, the animals in the stable, they gain the power of human speech, and they might tell me where the buried treasure is. So, I'll let you off the £1,000 this year. You can pay £2,000 next year, and you let me come and listen to your animals. Deal or no deal? Well, he wanted to say no deal. He had no choice, he got no £1,000, and so he said, okay, you can do it, come up tonight. And then he went up to the cider barrel in his kitchen, he tipped it up, and there was only just half a glass of cider left. That's how he was feeling at this point. It was definitely glass half empty kind of moment. And he was just about to drink the half glass when he remembered what he should be doing at this time of year, in the beginning of January. He should be wassailing the trees. And so he went out into the orchard and he found the oldest of the trees, and he addressed it as the apple tree man, and he raised up his glass and he sang to the tree. Old apple tree, we wassail thee and hoping thou will bear. Say that. Old apple tree, we wassail thee and hoping thou will bear. For who knows where we all shall be at Apple Day this year. For who knows where we all shall be at Apple Day this year. For to grow well and to blow well and merry oh let us be. For to grow well and to blow well and merry oh let us be. Let everybody raise up their cup and drink to the old apple tree. Let everybody raise up their cup and drink to the old apple tree. And he had a quick sneaky little slurp for himself. And he took the rest of that cup and he poured it onto the ground, a libation to the land and a toast to the tree. And as he stood back, there must have been a magical kind of breeze, because the branches started to move on the old apple tree. They almost started to look like arms. And the trunk of the tree, the bark, almost started to look like a wizened old face. And as he looked, he thought he could almost see the apple tree man himself. Is that you? Said the apple tree man. I do like a drop of my own juice. And I haven't had any of that cider for a long time. Nobody's bothered to wassail me. So I'll tell you what, you've been good to me, I'll be good to you. If I was you, I'd go in your shed and get out that little spade you've got in the corner. And then take the spade and dig underneath my left diggity root, and you might find a bit of buried treasure, but don't tell your brother about it. And suddenly the old apple tree man was once more just an apple tree. And he went into the shed, he got his spade, he dug as gently as he could underneath the roots, and sure enough, there was a little box. He opened it up, and his eyes lit from the golden gleam of all the coins, way more than £1,000 in there. And he shut it, and he hid it underneath his jacket, inside his house. And it wasn't many hours later when the phone rang. You can't do that on purpose. She's so ashamed. When the door was knocked, and there was the younger brother saying, "I've come to listen to your animals." He said, "Go ahead and sit by the stable if you want to." And he sat by the stable door, and he listened, and he could hear an owl. Could you help me out with an owl? Lovely. He could hear a badger. A badger that really wanted to be a duck. Let's do a badger together like this. Badger, 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 mushroom. And there was the sounds of the wildlife, and suddenly there was a great gong of the church tower clock thing. Going. And suddenly the animals inside the stables, they started to speak. The ox and the donkey started to talk, and they told about how their back was strengthened and how their leg had got the articulation back. They talked about how good the food was. They talked about how lovely the orchard was these days. They talked about this and they talked about that, but they never mentioned any buried treasure, because that treasure wasn't buried anymore, and they weren't going to say who'd got it. Well, the story says that the younger brother got pretty bored with trying to make a living out of a farm, and so he sold it to his older brother, who had recently come into a bit of a fortune. So he bought the land, and he looked after the land as well as his old father before him. He celebrated the seasons from May Day to Midsummer, from Harvest Home and Apple Day, all the way to the winter wassail, where he never ever forgot to go out to the trees and propose a toast in the cold time of the year. Wassail! Drink ale! So we've come to the point in the proceedings where we are ready to say thank you and goodbye to the last year's royalty of the orchard, the King and the Queen. I know I've seen the Queen here. Is there any other? Is the King here this year? Sometimes they just get so high above their station they go off to other places. So we'll say goodbye to the King, but we'll ask, is Jessie here? Jessie? She's here anyway. So what we'll do, we'll just say a big thank you to the King and the Queen. So maybe you could shout out as loud as you can. Thank you, Your Majesties. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Your Majesties. And now we have the happy tidings. In the old days, just as a kind of to fill you in, you would have been king or queen for the year. The fertility of the orchard would have been blessed by you. You could have had anything you wanted from the town for the whole of that year. You can imagine what you would want for yourself. And at the end of that year, when you retired, there would be a ritual sacrifice. It turns out that the council were keen on us reinventing all aspects of the Wassail ceremony. So we're just going to let them retire while still living. But we are going to choose another Wassail king and a Wassail king. We're going to throw the apples of fate. Yes, it does deserve some kind of vocalization. The apple of fate. So I'm going to throw the first one will be the Wassail queen. If you want to jostle for position or if you want to get out of the way and run screaming. I'm going to throw, if I could have a lovely, maybe countdown from 5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Heads up! Who we got? The Wassail Queen, Salut! Come on in! Come to the front! Salut! Oh, you're looking so appley green! Normally this is a crown, let's have it as a necklace. Oh no, it does fit as a crown, just about. And I almost don't know whether you need it with that, but maybe the red and the green should always be seen in the orchard. Could you say, Your Majesty Salut?
Your Majesty Salute.
And now we're going to choose an apple king. So maybe I'll go a little bit over this way. And if you're of the feminine disposition, then maybe just palm it off into a likely fella. Okay, here we go. 5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
John, King John! On the red and the green. Oh, that maybe could go the other way around. She might be the Queen's a little bit smaller. So Queen Salut and King John. And your apple, you are dressed as if you woke up this morning, both of you, and thought, I'm going to be king today. I'm going to be queen today. And you will look absolutely splendid. So sorry about your respective partners. So for the year, you are now the couple of the orchard, the reigning royalty, who will preside over the fertility and over the abundance of the apple orchard. And if anything goes wrong, we know where both of you live. Just be careful. But it's not just down to these guys. We've all got duties to perform. And the first one is to choose which tree will be the old apple tree man. We've got a fine orchard here of which all the trees will be toasted in the right time. But for the ceremony to carry on, we need one tree to be chosen to be the representative of the whole orchard. So, could we have some music? Sue, have you packed away? Has anybody got any music? We all packed away. Let's do it to the theme tune of the Archers.
Yes.
Salut and John, if you can have a little parting of the ways in the middle here, and Salut and John will lead us to the tree of their choice. Come with us. And so, one of the symbols of the orchard and of the fertility of the land is the Dorset.
I suggest you go round and see from round there.
The Dorset Otter, what's his name? The Dorset Otter is always 1 year old. He's born on May Day morning. You'll normally find him up on Cerne Abbot Hill with the giant with the big whistle. And he gets born on May Day morning and he lives all the way through to the winter to Wassail Day, and on Wassail Day he dies or goes to sleep if you're an adult. And his last duty in the land is to help with the scaring of the bad spirits away from the branches of the tree. So do we have anyone, it's the kind of thing, if I threw this and you caught it, you might have something to say about it. So would anybody like to grab the bullock by the horns? Or do I choose in a random fate of a likely fella? Well, there is a man I know here that was once Herne the Hunter, and I've caught his eye, and he's caught mine, and he's a game lad. Come on, you can be the tosser. That's what he wants. fans. On a count of 3, we're going to scare away all the bad spirits. And the daughter Otto here will raise his horns. He'll gallivant and canter around the trees. And he'll scare the trees. And then when he's completely exhausted, he'll hang his head in the branches of the tree and gracefully retire. Not your own head. Okay, let's have a countdown from 3 to 1. The loudest noise, if you haven't got pots and pans to bang, we'll do some apple howling. So scream as loud as you can, clearing away. If 2019 was a bit of a problem personally or politically for you, then you want to channel your cathartic energies to get rid of the bad spirits that beneath bolts of the tree itself have gathered in the branches. So from 3, 2, 1. Of a folk tradition we might have every year. What do you do next year? You have a job for life. Well, so we cleared the tree. The tree's now clean, clear, ready to kind of receive the blessings of the orchard committee. Spanish, bless.
Porque el nuevo año sea maravilloso, con muchas manzanas. ¡Hala!
It's amazing what people cheer at when they've no idea what it is. So I'll give it a little bit of the juice of the apple that the trees have given to us. And then have a little smoke yourself. You know, this is the loving cup. They say the loving cup can do you no harm. You show it around in the cider shed. And in fact, if you do find yourself feeling a little bit off colour, then a sip from the loving cup will do you just right. So we could pass that around and anybody would like to have a little sip as well. If you are pregnant, then please just go gently. If you want to be pregnant, drink deep! Grow well and bear well.
May you grow well and bear well.
And next year may we have.
Next year may we have.
Hatfuls and catfuls.
Apples and catfuls.
And 3 bushels bags full.
3 bushel bags full.
And little heaps of apples underneath the stairs. I love this bit when you repeat everything. And if I say pip pip, could you say hooray? Pip pip.
Hooray! Hooray! Hooray!
Fantastic. Wassail!
Wassail!
Brilliant. And now I think we're at the stage where we just need to sing to the tree. And then we'll invite everybody to come and take a little bit of bread and find a tree, and maybe in your own little private ceremony, whether clothed or not, probably clothed, find your own little tree and say a few words to that tree, a little blessing to that particular tree, put a little piece of toast in there. We might need to chop up the bowl. Where is the loving bowl? Well, at least I'd have a little sip. Finish it off. Where's the bowl?